Welcome to the Divorce View Talk Show. Hello, it's Joanie Winberg, divorce mentor, founder of the National Association of Divorce for Women and Children, as well as GettingAlongSolutions.com. It's always a joy every week for me to do this show together with my co-host, Rosalind and Sedacca. Hello, Roz.
Hi, Joanie. Want to wish everyone a happy, healthy new year. I'm Rosalind and Sedacca, a divorce and parenting coach. I'm a founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network and author of How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce. And we have a special time that we're commemorating this month, and starting with this show. January is International Child-Centered Divorce Month. And we recognize this month every January as a time to educate parents about all facets of divorce and how it affects the parenting experience. As you all know, if you get a divorce and you don't have children, it's a very simple process as you cut that cord. But when you have children and there's co-parenting involved, the process is much more complicated, more convoluted, and more challenging on many, many levels. So we're here to help unravel them. And we have a special website that's available only in January, throughout January, and we have experts, guest experts on 4 continents around the world who are participating by giving complimentary resources, tools, gifts to parents to help them make the best decisions regarding divorce. And our guest tonight happens to be one of the experts who's contributing, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But why don't you tell us who our guest is, Joanie, and we'll move right in.
Absolutely. We're excited to have Cindy Holbrook, who is a certified divorce coach, with us this evening. We have a really interesting topic that I think is very powerful and a great way to start off the International Child-Centered Divorce Month. The topic we're going to talk about tonight are 3 things you silently teach your children as you grieve after divorce. So without further ado, here our special guest tonight, Cindy Holbrook. Welcome, Cindy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, Cindy, this is just a phenomenal topic. Roz and I, over the time here, have touched upon divorce that feels like the loss of a life or so forth, the grieving. But we really want to focus on this silent grieving and how can it affect our children when we're going through this divorce. So kind of fill us in a little bit about that topic, and then also give us some insight about who you are and what you do as well, Cindy.
Okay. Well, first, who I am, I'm Cindy Holbrook. I am the CEO of Coaching for Divorced Women. I have coached men as well, but most of my clientele is women. And I've been a divorce coach since 2011. And before that, I worked in social services for over 20 years. I personally also got a divorce after a 20-year marriage due to emotional abuse. And it was very interesting that even though I chose to leave, I wasn't expecting to grieve. And it was very interesting to me how much my children learned from watching me. So, and my children were both teenagers at the time, but through working with my clients, I really noticed a huge impact on the children with the way they grieve. For example, one of my clients told me that her son told her, well, you hate Daddy anyway, so what's the difference? And a 5-year-old really shouldn't be saying that to their mother. Well, you hate Daddy. So that's a pretty strong word for him to use. And it's all about how you're dealing with your own grief. A lot of people don't realize with grieving, you grieve your divorce just like you grieve the death of a spouse. And there's a couple of main differences. First of all, with a divorce, it was a choice that someone made. With death, it's usually not a choice. But when somebody dies, everybody rallies around you and they hug you and comfort you and tell you you can cry all you want. Don't worry about crying. You have a right to cry. They cook you food, bring you casseroles, come over and clean your house. And they tell you, whatever you do, honey, do not make any major decisions for at least a year. with the divorce, you're going through the same exact grieving process, the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, before you get to the acceptance. And you definitely have nobody cooking you any food, and people are people aren't cleaning your house, and you are forced to make major decisions that's going to affect your life and your children's lives. And to top it off,
a beautiful point, Cindy. I'm really glad you brought that up because it is such an acute difference.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that they people always tell you, oh, you're better off without him. Just get over it. And how can you still love him? You're getting a divorce. You shouldn't love him. So you have all these conflicting feelings, and you a lot of times feel alone and don't know where to go.
Mm. So how did using your own story or stories of the clients, or maybe you can kind of fill us in, how do you help your clients be aware of the grieving and how it's influencing the children?
Mm-hmm. And that's the key word, is aware. It's being aware of how are you reacting. Children watch every single thing you do. I mean, and the younger they are, the more they watch you. And they're looking to you to see how to live in the world. How's an adult supposed to live? So if you're sitting there and you are crying all the time, they're going to think, wow, if something bad happens, all you're supposed to do is sit there and cry and do nothing else. But if you take the time to tell your child, it's healthy to cry when you're sad, and I want you to cry with me. If you're sad because mommy or daddy left, it's okay to cry. Then they're going to learn, hey, it's okay to cry. A lot of people, we don't like emotions that make us feel bad, whether it's being angry or being sad or being depressed. We don't like it, so we shove them away. And so if we're trying to shove our emotions away and act like they don't exist, then we're teaching our children that it's unsafe to have emotions.
Mm.
And go ahead.
I can relate to that. I just even families that I know, told someone that even lost their husband, as far as death-wise, don't cry, move on. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's okay to cry. So you're saying, it's healthy, it's all right to cry. I mean, you're not emotional like that 24/7 in front of your kids, but yet if you're feeling sad, it's okay to identify it as long as it's not going on long term, would you say?
Right, exactly. And really, whenever you cry it out, if you acknowledge your feeling and say, I feel sad because I'm getting a divorce, and you acknowledge it, especially if you acknowledge it out loud, even to yourself, and you allow yourself to cry, that's actually a healing process. Whereas shoving it in, it's going to come out sooner or later some way, either in your health or by you just exploding for the craziest thing. You come home, you kick the dog, and you kick the walls and stuff like that.
Plus, you'd hate to have your kids at a young age hold it in and afraid to express themselves.
Right, exactly. And I know I have one client who she was saying, every time she would have any altercations with her ex, it was pretty volatile, and there was a lot of slinging back and forth and accusations. And she would get so angry, and then her child would go, Mommy, I don't like it when you're angry. Please don't be angry. Are you mad at me, Mommy? Everything will be okay, Mommy. And this child was 4 years old, and you don't want your 4-year-old taking on that type of a responsibility. And it's fine to be angry, and anger in itself is not cause negative consequences. It's what you choose to do with that anger that's creating negative or positive consequences. So if you're angry, I had a client who was so angry at her ex, she slashed his tires on his car, and she keyed his car. She actually wound up spending some time in jail due to this. And so this is a very unhealthy way to express your anger. So if you find healthy ways.
You're making some very important points, and I just wanted to interject the concept because too often we find that children start parenting their parents during and after a divorce because their parents become so emotionally distraught. And so this little girl was protecting and taking care of her mother. You don't want that to happen, so you have to be very careful. You want to be honest about expressing your feelings, but you don't want to be inundating your children with drama so that they feel they have to take over the parenting role and protect you and take care of you. It also colors how they feel about the other parent, which isn't fair to them. So
Right.
that if mommy is so distraught, then they feel they have to hate daddy too. We have to really be careful to be non-biased in what we tell our kids and what we share with our kids. Regardless of how we may feel personally, we could vent to our friends and we could scream and yell about our ex, but when it comes to the kids, we can't be bad-mouthing the ex, and we have to be very careful about what we tell them and what we say. So continue, Cindy, because you're making such important points.
I do know one thing that I use that I think makes a huge difference. It's the first time that you and I met, and I had interviewed you for a program. You had said, do you hate or do you love your child more than you hate your ex?
Yes.
And I use that all of the time. And I also tell people, if you're making decisions based on love for your child versus hatred for your ex, you're going to be making really good decisions. Because decisions based out of love are healthy versus decisions based on out of anger and hatred is not going to do anybody any good, and it's going to affect you somehow, some way in your future, or affect the well-being of your child.
Cindy, could you take us through, for example, some of the stages? Are they similar to the grieving, like you've mentioned, for someone that has passed away?
Definitely.
So I
similar to the grieving.
Right, because I was going to say, I want people to recognize that they are grieving, because they might not even know that. And then also, if you kind of question two, kind of piggyback off of that, as far as any techniques that you would have to help someone. So what is actually the stages or something they should be aware of?
The stages, first of all, is denial, which is simply not believing that it's happening. This isn't happening to me. Often the person that's being left is going to be more in denial because they haven't had the same length of time to think about it and ponder over it than the person that left. And then you have bargaining, which is if only. In bargaining, you're trying to change the past. You're saying, if I would have done this, then things would have been different. Or if he wouldn't have done that. Constantly just, rehashing what could have I done differently. Or a lot of people say, oh, I threw away 20 years of my life. Well, you didn't throw away 20 years of your life. It was real what you experienced with your marriage. So all of that's part of bargaining because they're trying to change the past by changing something that happened. You have anger. And anger, whenever I talk about anger, because you can get stuck in the stage, and you can get stuck in this stage for eons of years. My aunt hated my uncle. They got divorced after about 25 years of marriage. And I think I was 18 when Aunt June and Uncle Joe got a divorce. And Aunt June used to always say, I'm going to make Joe pay till the day he dies. She was very angry at him about things that had happened, and she would not let it go. When I got a divorce, she said, you should do the same thing that I did, and you make Earl pay till the day he dies, because I'm really happy I'm making Joe pay. And I'm like, Aunt June, this is like crazy, this anger.
Where her kids were older.
Yeah, well, her kids were older, but it definitely created a lot of drama for the whole family because the kids felt that they had to choose because of this hatred. Aunt June died at 94 years of age. The last time I spoke to her, which was about 6 months before she died, she told me, I'm glad that I made Joe pay till the day he dies.
Wow.
So she went through this for like 35 years. And I'm like, she robbed herself of peace and happiness. And she robbed her family, her children, of really being able to, it was like her kids had to go, oh, do I invite mom or dad to my kid's birthday party? So it was really hard for her adult kids because she couldn't be in the same room with Joe. And I don't wish that for anybody, especially witnessing this, with my aunt. And it's like you have to forgive and let go of the anger or the depression if you're in a depressed stage, in order to create peace and happiness in your life and peace and happiness for your children.
I just want to
Absolutely.
add that it's very selfish for a parent to do that when children are involved, because
Yes.
it's the children who suffer. When you have a graduation, a birthday, holidays, vacation,
Wedding.
and weddings especially,
Right.
the two parents can't be in the same room, and you have to force your kids to create different agendas to accommodate you. That is just being selfish. And it's
Yes.
role modeling the worst facet of parenting, where you can't be mature, you can't be responsible, you can't sit for 2 hours in the same room as your ex to honor your child. It's disgraceful, and I hope anyone who ever even considers it for a moment lets that thought go, because it's your children who pay the price.
Mm-hmm. And regardless, honoring the fact that they are your child's father or mother, and not talking bad about them, because then you're teaching, the three things that you're teaching your children by your grieving is how to deal with your emotions, how to deal with change, because change is happening constantly. And
Right.
so if your children see you getting angry about a change that you don't like, then they're going to grow up being angry children themselves. Or they're going to grow up resenting you, which you don't want. And then it's how to respond, whether to respond or to react to situations and people. Because whenever you're grieving, you really need to pay attention to what you're doing and pay attention to, are you really angry that he left you, or are you really angry? I had a client, whenever her ex left her, he told her 15-year-old son, "You are dead to me."
Oh my God.
Because her
Shame on
15-year-old
him.
son did not want to go with him. And the mother really handled this graciously. She's like, "I don't know why your father said that, but there's nothing wrong with you, and you're allowed to make your own decisions. And for whatever reason, this is the decision he made." So even through that, the mother never badmouthed the father, which, that's a drastic thing to say to your child, "You're dead to me." And but you do have people that are saying things like this, and the 15-year-old watched his mother. Well, how am I supposed to respond to what Dad just told me?
But you know what? Hats off to her, because what she did, first of all, she was definitely the adult here, and she identified it that it has nothing to do with him, that this is his stuff, and he is a great kid. He's a great, just like when kids are growing up, not to say that you're a bad boy, you're a bad girl. It's just that you're a great kiddo, or a great kid, or a great boy or girl. I'm just not happy with your behavior. So, she really separated that for him to allow him to, be healthy emotionally as much as he could. So good for that mom. Great.
Yeah. Yeah, and she said it was a lot, she had said that had she not been coaching with me, she may have reacted differently to the whole thing, because she had started coaching with me earlier. But it was definitely, the whole thing is responding and not reacting. So if you take a second back and you're like, what's the best thing for my child? As I said earlier, making the decision based out of love. I often tell my clients, even especially with teenagers, because teenagers can push our buttons faster than just about any other person in the world. And I go, if you look at your child whenever you're angry at them, and you picture something that you love about them while you're disciplining them, the discipline comes out really out of love versus out of anger, and you get a lot further with that child, because you're not using the same tone. You're using a tone of love and concern versus anger and disgust or feeling that you don't approve of their behavior, you don't approve of them. So it helps the child feel that they're, that they're being approved of, regardless if they did this one little thing wrong. So
I love that. I think that's a very powerful tool for people to keep in mind, and it works.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, now, so you've been kind of touching upon different techniques, but maybe as far as even just kind of either list them or have the clarity of some of the techniques that people can really use once they become aware that they're grieving, and how they can help themselves and their children to get through this? What some of the tools or techniques
Mhm.
would you share?
It's definitely, stating your feeling and exactly why you're feeling. And it's not combining. A lot of us combine two different griefs. And I can really recognize it whenever I'm seeing it in a client that I'm working one-on-one with. And so I'm going to use my own example. My ex, Earl, told me, well, first on a Sunday, my mom died unexpectedly at 8:30 in the morning. The following Sunday at 8:30 in the morning, Earl told me he didn't love me anymore, but was going to stay with me because of the kids. For years, I combined these two things, my mom's death and Earl not loving me, as one grief. That was way too much for me to handle. So I had a very intelligent friend that told me, she said, Cindy, you cannot mention your mom dying without mentioning Earl not loving you, and you can't mention Earl not loving you without mentioning your mom dying. And she said they're two totally separate things, and you have to separate them in your mind and deal with them separately. So in a case like that, it's like, okay, I am sad that my mom died. I am sad that Earl doesn't love me. So they're two separate sadnesses that I had to deal with. But whenever I was combining them, they were way too big to deal with.
That's a good point.
And a lot of people, whenever they're grieving, they may be grieving that their husband left. They may be grieving the loss of their house. They may be grieving loss of a home. I've had several clients that had either a parent or a sibling or somebody die in around the same period of their divorce. They're also grieving loss of their friends because, as you guys know, whenever you get a divorce, a lot of friends vanish. And so you're feeling really alone in your grieving, and then you're combining all these different things as one thing. So it's really important to separate them. And whenever you're separating them and verbally stating them out loud, I'm sad that this happened, I'm angry that this happened, and you're dealing with each one, you're teaching your child not to lump everything together. You're teaching your child to deal with each instance separately, and that each event, each situation has its own feelings and its own response. But if you just start reacting to things, it's not going to work, because reaction is just going to cause more chaos for everybody involved.
I was just going to add that response is a choice, and you think about it, and then you decide how you're going to respond. Reacting is an automatic impulse and isn't always the most conscious, most aware, wisest way to behave. Mm-hmm. So if we could share that with our children, it's a life lesson that'll really be of value to them.
Mm-hmm. And I also like, Cindy, the way you're saying is break it down into small pieces versus one whole, situation or one whole challenge. Break it down. It's almost like anything. When you break it down into pieces, it's easier to deal with versus, that big white elephant in the room. You always say start with your, one toe there or whatever. And so that's great advice, because I would assume a lot of people are just bringing it all together, and that's really overwhelming.
Yeah. Why don't we take a moment, Cindy, for you to tell people how they can find you and your products and services and what you do, so that we make sure they have access to you.
I have I don't know how many URLs I can share, but I do have. You can go to divorcerecoverycompass.com, and it is a test to see where you are in your own grieving process. So you just answer, I think it's 25 questions, and then once you submit it, you will then, depending upon if you're contemplating divorce, in the process of divorce, or already divorced, you will get a 6-week series of emails teaching you how to deal with your divorce from where you are right now, and how to move forward with confidence, clarity, and courage.
Right.
That's awesome.
And I also offer an 8-week course of CompassionateDivorceRecovery.com, where in it I share a lot more techniques, and it's all about finding out, discovering who you are, and using I use visualization a lot. The proper way to use visualization in order to effectively deal with your ex, especially if you're angry at him. So whenever you start visualizing what you want to be happening, then chances are whenever you're in that situation, this is how you're going to react or respond versus your typical reaction of yelling back. It's sort of knowing when they're trying to hit your buttons. I did also say that I wanted to share something that your listeners can take away with them to use. It's a very simple process. I mean, we all know breathing works. So if you just take, 3 deep breaths, and on your third breath as you exhale, tell your shoulders to relax, and then sort of look around and ask yourself, get really in tune. So you're taking 3 deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. 2, and then with the third one, tell your shoulders to relax, and then ask yourself, what do I see? What do I hear? What am I touching? What am I smelling? What am I tasting? Because this brings you into the present moment. And whenever you're in the present moment, you're going to be responding based on the present moment and not everything that happened a minute ago or everything that happened yesterday. You're getting back in tune with right this moment. And also, whenever you're asking yourself, tuning in with your 5 senses, you can just tell yourself, I am a smart woman. I am a smart man. I will figure this out. But, give some sort of praise to yourself, some sort of mantra, because this will help clear your mind and help you to respond in a healthier manner, whether it's towards your ex or towards your children. Especially if you're in court and your ex starts spouting out stuff, you can very easily do this, and it's going to help you remain calm. And the judge usually sees that, hey, you're remaining calm, and this other person's getting out of control, and this works in your favor.
I always love the expression, this too shall pass. And, I remember someone saying that to me after my divorce, and they said, this too shall pass. And I remember going, you really think so? I mean, you're just so upset, and you just can't even imagine. But, it was kind of like someone threw me a rope to pull me in and save me, and you just hung on to that. And so I always used to say, this too shall pass. So great advice, great technique there, Cindy.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been wonderful. Can we take a minute to share about International Child Center?
Absolutely. Go for it there, Roz.
So our listeners can know where to go to find. We have free coaching services, ebooks, kits, videos, audios, you name it. There's a wealth of advice, information, and tips from divorce professionals around the world, and we're very proud of it. And there's just one address you need to know to go in the month of January, and that's divorcedparentsupport.com/ebook. That's divorced with an ED. divorcedparentsupport.com/ebook. And you put your email address in, and you'll first get my ebook on post-divorce parenting, and then you'll automatically be linked to the full page filled with gifts from all the professionals. There's also a calendar of events, so you could check out other interviews and activities taking place in January, all supporting International Child Center Divorce Month. So we look forward to your participating and taking advantage of this. We have such gracious and generous professionals who have given of their products and services and time, and there's no excuse not to fully educate yourself about every situation that you could possibly want to know about. Take advantage of it now.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roz. Thanks for getting that so people know where to go. And also, Cindy, just so thrilled that you were on the show today. A lot of great information. Love your techniques as well to really help support people, and to really, once again, kind of pulling it all together to be aware of how when you're silently grieving, how that can affect the children. And to really be conscious about it and then try some of your techniques. So thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
A takeaway message for us.
Yes.
A takeaway message for you.
Breathe deeply.
Breathe, yes, definitely breathe deeply. Breathe deeply. And, you know, focus on the love for your child, because that can get you through anything. It really can. You know, I always say the mom part of me took over. So
Like that.
because whenever you're focusing on your child, you're a different person, because we want everything to be best for our children.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
And also to our listeners, to see this video as many times as you would like, to tune in to Cindy and also to hear more of her techniques that she shared with us today, or to hear them again, just go to divorceview.com, and this video will be posted there so that you can see it and review it as many times as you like. So we thank you so much for tuning in this week. And always remember, it's a weekly show, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with my great host, Rosalind and Sedacca. So until next week, make it a good week.